and extended the invitation. Head of the board, if I'm right.
VP.
VP of the board. With me, Tariq King.
Yes.
Did I say it right?
You said it right, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I have been practicing.
Practicing, yeah, I can tell.
Amigo Tariq, thank you very much for sitting up here with me and well, for the invitation as well.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here, honestly.
It's been a blast. It's my first time at PNSQC, and it has been really entertaining. I have so many questions about the conference, but I'm sure before that, the people watching may have questions about you. So if you don't mind sharing with everyone, who are you, what do you do, and what's the deal with Tariq?
Sure. So I like to think of myself as just someone who just fell in love with software quality from early on. From school, I remember being able to take software testing courses at Florida Tech with James Whitaker and Kim Kaner, some really big names in testing. And really it was probably, and then from there we decided that I wanted to move into the software industry and started off at Ultimate Software, now known as UKG. They're an HR, payroll, HCM cloud-based provider. I started there as a principal architect and then went up to the ranks as a manager, director of quality, and then head of their quality program. While I was there, I started then playing around with the idea of using AI and machine learning for test automation. They had a moonshot project where we were trying to just investigate ways that we could make the software testing space a little bit more efficient.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. How long ago was this?
That was in 2014, 15, where we started that journey at Ultimate Software.
Okay.
So it was right around the time where there was a few startups, probably like 3 startups actually working on that problem, but we were working on it internally and just trying to kind of push forward on the space. And that's actually how I met Jason Alban. I know you sat down and you talked with Jason. He did a talk at the conference. And then I started working on that in the space, and then we started collaborating at conferences. So we created a workshop together, did a whole bunch of just different talks on the theme, keynotes, what have you not. And then in 2019, I started looking at different opportunities and actually joined Jason at Test AI. And I spent a good 3 years there working on different problems related to AI and machine learning for software testing. And then as part of that, it was looking at different verticals. So enterprise applications, gaming, and a lot of different things. And that kind of led into now how do we deal with testing the metaverse? So it's been a big journey along different streams. And I got something exciting coming next. So won't spoil it for everyone, but my evolution and my journey is still continuing.
I think we already had some hints from Jason on what is going on or what's coming. It's really interesting to me. We were talking a little bit about you, and I don't know if you noticed, you were having lunch and Jason was like, yeah, and Tariq, and Tariq, and Tariq. You were the star, man.
Yeah. Well, that's because he has crazy ideas, and he sometimes puts me in the middle of those crazy ideas, right? But I think it's good, right? It's creativity, innovation, right?
I think it's great to be the one standing in the line of shooting of those ideas. Like when they blast out and you are standing there, you can play around with a lot of things. And I'm happy to know that you were prepared for it. Like AI is not like a new thing for you or something that you are trying to get your grip on. And that's one that before, I mean, which one should we tackle? No, we are talking AI right now. How was just your start? How was it for you to pick up on it? Because I know, and I personally feel this a little bit as well, how to tackle it, how to get into it, what are the first steps, what should be people learning, all those good old things. But first, how was the very beginning for you? How did you?
Yeah, I think the very beginning for myself and my team at Ultimate was really that we just needed to get a foundation of the knowledge, right? Because with any kind of new area, sometimes it can be very confusing. You hear a lot of people saying this, or AI is this, ML is this, like what are actually these things? And so we started by just taking some free online courses on YouTube.
No way.
Yeah, Andrew Ng, who's very famous in the space, had a Stanford course that's still available free on YouTube on machine learning. So look for it, Andrew Ng, NG. And we just started learning, kind of the fundamentals and the foundations. And then we had to then move into a practical space. And for that, there was a website called machinelearningmastery.com. A guy named Jason Brownlee, he's a PhD, but he does what is called a lot of applied machine learning, not theoretical machine learning or any kind of theory. He focuses on code examples and lets you train your first neural network or start your first project, because it's a balance of getting that foundation. And then obviously, like we heard from the keynote this morning, Julia talked about visual learners versus auditory versus hands-on. So it was kind of like, a little bit of each of these things to help build up that foundation of knowledge, some hands-on, some visual learning, to kind of start it off. So that's how we started, by just getting that foundation. And then because we were thinking of what we would do in the space, then we said, well, what can we do as a first project that we think would be meaningful? We're in the space of software test automation. Are there gaps? And first thing that kind of came to mind was that we have to still do a lot of manual creation of test cases before we can actually start writing testing. Automation, what we call automation. So it would be good to kind of reduce some of that effort, the manual effort. That would give the business a bigger bang for its buck if we could automate things like analyzing requirements and looking for what would be some of the tests that would be run to satisfy those requirements and actually start to generate those things. So using natural language processing and different techniques. Also looking at the application itself and creating a state model and seeing if we could actually generate tests that traverse the application from page to page automatically without having to have humans being involved. So imagine a system where you would just configure your testing techniques that you want to use and you click go and the bots just kind of start going. So that was kind of how we got started at Ultimate. And ironically, when I met Jason, it was because he was giving a talk on mobile testing at the time. He's very well versed in mobile, and we were looking at a mobile strategy. So
when was that?
This was at what was called the Better Software Conference over in Las Vegas back in 2016, I believe. 2015 or 2016, around that time. And at the end of his talk, he shot up a screenshot and some video of what he was doing now, which was like using bots to test AI to test applications in the cloud. And I was like, oh wow, here's someone working on a similar problem. He was doing mobile. I was kind of focused on web in a very narrow silo. And that's when we started kind of engaging and collaborating in the space and going to conferences together.
What you just mentioned, I mean, this has been an overload at a moment, because first thing that amazed me is I have been wanting to learn a little bit more AI, understand. I mean, at a bigger picture, I think I know what it's supposed to do, machine learning. You have to feed and let it work, blah, blah, blah. I may be saying some silly things, but that's what I understand of it. Yeah. But I haven't been able to get truly hands-on and start doing these things. And you're telling me YouTube, you found it for free?
Yeah, it's for free. Actually, most of the things that I even teach myself up to now still are usually like free courses or free videos. I haven't taken any sort of advanced degree in machine learning.
Wow.
So there's a lot of information just out there if you want to get started.
Take a look, and personally, I'm taking notes on what you're mentioning, Andrew's videos and everything that can be used as starting points.
Yeah.
And as well, by any chance, when you mention like analyzing and being able to automatically generate these test cases and all these things, are you dealing, I mean, on my side, performance testing, metrics, logs, and traces?
Yeah.
Probably that's a big deal for this type of things, right?
Yeah, very big deal. And actually, like you mentioned, performance, one of the side projects that we did after we started looking at functional testing, because Kaushal Dalvi, who also giving the keynote later on this afternoon, him and his team, which reported up to me, were looking at how to automate their performance regression suites back then. And so they were on that journey as well at the same time. So because there's a lot of information, as you know, when it comes to monitoring and logs and auditing, all that information is super valuable for us to know where we should explore, where we should test, what tests should be run, or even when they should be run, right? Because if you're thinking about peak times or things where anomalous, weird things are happening, that is the information that can really help make your automated test generation more realistic. Right? Without that, you might be shooting in the dark.
It's funny because I have given a few talks. The Neoris pack with some amigos, Henrik. I did a talk like with this idea: use traces, analyze them, generate automatically performance and load test scenarios from what you have, and use
your time kind of recoding scripts just because now the traffic patterns have changed. It's not really the most efficient use of those resources, right? So if you can actually pull some of that into an automated kind of framework that helps move that along, then those folks can focus on the harder problems and the more challenging things that might come their way.
It's funny because you hit the nail on the head on some detail. I remember some projects that half of the time that performance engineer, probably expensive, not that I knew how much my bosses were charging for me, probably quite a bit, and I was doing test cases. I was going and asking the people, and there's a twitch because you cannot use directly functional test cases. You cannot be thrown at an ALM, an X-ray repository to figure out. You gotta talk to people, document, find the best routes. But if you can somehow intelligentize that and have it more in an automatic path, there's a plethora of bits, tests, scenarios that you can get out of that without us performance engineers being stuck on some of those.
Yeah, it's a huge. Remember, the goal that we had was about cost savings, right? So if you start to think about where AI and machine learning can help in testing, the biggest thing that you want to do is reduce the manual effort. And if you now think about that with the type of resources, so now perhaps maybe because of their specialization, I got to pay X amount more dollars for a performance engineer versus even a software engineer or a quality engineer, then I really want to look at those areas and say, well, these folks who I'm probably paying top dollar for, how can I save their time, right? And start there, because then we can show the business, hey, look, we're using AI machine learning, all great. They don't really care much about what you use. But if you can say, I can reduce, our time for regression by a week using this automated technique, now you have their attention, right? And now you have their buy-in automatically. Oh, you can save this amount of money, this amount of headcount, then let's go for this project. And then they invest in you.
It's interesting because also when you mention these, lately the industry, well, not lately, I think for a while, has been like automate, and it's like lots of people, lots of time used, and probably lots of resources, as you very well said. Several times my time was being used scripting and assembling the scenarios and things that is not because we don't want to be doing it, but there are more critical things that we could be doing as
for sure.
Not only performance engineers, but QA engineers, AI engineers, that the time is being used differently.
Yeah.
And following up in this line for AI, I have this is more like a personal question. Where should I start? What tools would you recommend me to start looking at if I want to learn and do my first baby steps on something like that?
Yeah, so what I tell people is that one of the coolest things about the machine learning space, well, first short answer is Python. And that sounds like a huge answer because that's a programming language, but not really. The combination of being able to use Jupyter notebooks, so Google has, for example, Google Colab, which is just a way for you to spin up these environments in the cloud, free of charge. All you need is a Google account. and it already has a lot of the dependencies and the Python configuration there. And people actually have a lot of example tutorial workbooks out there. So you can just download that or even point to the Git repository for that particular notebook, spin it up in an environment live there, and you can actually just start right away. It's pretty easy. And so there's Google Colab, which is just one version, and the other one is called Jupyter Notebooks, and there's mybinder.org, and there's some other things that are just always, these on demand, spin them up, have your environment ready. I use them all the time for my tutorials that I give here at workshops like this, because it gets away from the overhead of setting things up for you. So it's perfect for a beginner who doesn't want to deal with Python installations, libraries, etc. Of course, if you want to go through that, check out machinelearningmastery.com, because he also walks through step by step. Here's how you install everything if you want to do it on your local machine. But nowadays, most data scientists don't even worry with a lot of that. They can just spin up these environments and get going.
That's interesting. I was about to ask what is a Jupyter notebook.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's like a container with everything that you
need.
Just
like a container that you kind of can spin up on demand, that contains an environment where you can actually write executable code, compile it all within that environment. So just imagine almost as like we containerize your IDE, and now you can just run your projects and train. Google Colab even has built-in support for running your machine learning training on GPUs, right? So you can get the full gambit of training on a CPU and see what it's like to use a GPU or a TPU. So there's many, many advantages to kind of going down that route, because low barrier to entry is free, and there's a lot of resources out there where people have created these notebooks. I've done a couple myself to share with the community. Hey, let's get started in a hands-on way.
Take a look at those. And you mentioned, I know CPU, central processing units, graphical processing unit, GPUs. What's a TPU?
Oh, this has to do with tensors. So I don't want to get too,
Another
too
kind of
technical
worms
on it, but when you start thinking about one of the biggest areas that you'll see is the idea of using TensorFlow to train your machine learning models, deep learning, and things like that. So all in a nutshell, you're just thinking of what are the different processing units that I can have, and some of these scale more than others. So GPUs are very powerful compared to CPUs, similar with a TPU, and these are all available and accessible for deep learning, deep machine learning, right? With lots and lots of nodes and lots of layers.
That's interesting. I knew that GPUs were kind of preferred for artificial intelligence and Bitcoin mining and those type of things.
Yes.
But I didn't know about TPUs,
Sure.
something that I'm going to put a pin on and do some research on, because totally, I mean, again, trying to get in and understand multiple concepts around.
Yeah, there's a lot of information.
It's a huge universe, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All the AI, machine learning, artificial. And this gets me to an interesting point, because you, of course, you have an intersection with QA and with all these areas that you are developing interest on and implementing your AI skills into. How did you end up in PNSQC, or how did that happen? That's a...
Yeah, so actually, like I met, so Phil Liu, who's the president now, I met Phil initially at a conference called Soft Tech Asia in Malaysia. So Phil was a keynote speaker. I was also a keynote speaker there. And afterwards, we're very introverted people, even though you might not know that.
No, we all are. That's
stage,
a funny finding, yeah.
Yeah. And so Phil just asked me, hey, you want to hang out after and go to dinner? So I met Phil there. And then, some months later, he pinged me on LinkedIn or via email and said, hey, I'm the program chair this year for this conference, PNSQC. Would you be interested in doing a keynote speech? So I'd never heard much of PNSQC. I'd actually heard about PNSQC first a long time ago from a student of mine while I was a professor. He was a student, but he was also a Microsoft employee, and he had talked about this PNSQC. But in the academic world, we had never heard of this conference. So I didn't pay it much mind, but then years later, Phil being the program chair, I actually came 2018 and gave a keynote. That was when a lot of the AI machine learning stuff I was ready to share. And so I gave a keynote on whether or not the community felt that artificial intelligence could terminate what we call manual testing. And so that was a very big
so that's where it all started.
Yes, cinematic production. But then when I came to PNSQC, I kind of saw that it was a little bit different from most conferences. One of the key things is that they required you to write a paper, and not as a keynote speaker, but if you are
to do a talk.
Submitting a talk, it's not just an abstract. You have to commit to actually do a paper, and it's peer reviewed. And then I saw some other things. It was all volunteer organization. Then I saw that at that time they were around for 36 years. I just started to see more and more about the organization, and because it was volunteer-led, nonprofit, they were always looking for people to help out. And I told Phil, if you ever need any help with anything, I'm here. And so said, so done. I started to serve in the capacity on the board as the audit chair first, and just helping out with whatever was available. And then, last year got voted into the VP role, and Phil transitioned into the president role. So it's been a journey, but just helping to kind of push, I guess, software quality stories and kind of the blend of the practical with the kind of rigor of the academic review of a paper coming together makes it quite unique.
And how long ago was this that you met Phil?
Phil was in 2016, I met Phil.
So similar when you started all the AI adventures,
yes.
like seems like everything was
colliding. It was kind of colliding because actually the reason I was in Malaysia was because I was giving a keynote on AI, where my starting point before I even reached to the, hey, can AI actually help us with manual testing, was how do you actually figure out whether or not, there's these vendors talking, like, is it fad, fiction, or future? Like, is there something real here? And that's what I was presenting on, and I think Phil kind of saw that as an interesting direction and thought, hey, maybe we should have some related talk in the future at PNSQC.
Yeah, that's, and at so many levels when you were mentioning the story, how it all happened, I think that's how I ended up here a little bit as well.
Yeah.
The head of PNSQC comes and asks, like, hey, this was a keynote, can you come and talk? And it's funny because last year, a cousin of mine was part of the group supporting and helping. It's a volunteer conference, I'm finding out. And everyone here, like, you want to help PNSQC? Go and click, and there's, I think, in the webpage an area where...
volunteer section. You can send Sue Loth an email. Sue has done a phenomenal job this year helping to coordinate all of our volunteers. And that really makes a difference because, we're not doing this for profit. It's a nonprofit. We are all not getting paid for doing this. We're all volunteers. And so what is the reason that we're doing it? Well, our mission is to try to advance the knowledge in software quality. And that can only help everyone who's related to the software field. Doesn't matter what domain, doesn't matter if you're a tester, performance engineer, just trying to advance learning in that space.
It may sound a little kumbaya and world peace, but truly you can see here the people breaking their backs and trying to get the best content. The conference has been when I'm not here interviewing, I go and she told me next year you should, right away, I see the opening, I submit. And that's the other one, as soon as it opened, I'm like, this is not my usual abstract submission, that like it's a big ass paper. You have to, not to discourage people, but it's a different vibe, it's a different perspective. And it's funny enough, after I have submitted that, I walked into you on Star East.
Yeah, Star East.
And that's how we ended up here. And Gaushan is Gupta.
Bhushan Gupta. Yeah,
Bhushan.
He's the program chair.
I always butcher the name, sorry.
Oh, it's all good.
That's why at the opening I'm like, Tariq, am I saying it right? Should always do that. But he was reaching out and like, let's go over your topic, all your paper, and oh, you're in touch with Tariq for the keynote, blah. Like, okay, no, never mind, I need to check on other people. I totally understand, because now that I see the big job, the impact, and all that you are putting together, It's great, and it's what is even more amazing, and I have been quoting this again and again, it's the 40th anniversary.
40th anniversary, 40. Yeah, it's one of the longest tenured software quality conferences in the United States, if not the longest one. And again, for it to be all volunteer-based is, to me, a testament to just, some folks got together and said, let's start a conference. Let's make it about the content. Let's make it about the speakers. Let's make it about learning. And, that's just a very unique thing. You don't really see much like that. Sometimes things get very commercialized, and even though we have sponsors here and people sponsor the conference, it is very much a focus on, hey, you know what, you're an attendee, go to the talks that you want. If there's a vendor that's of interest to you, go see them, but we're not pushing vendors on anyone. Actually, the vendors want leads that are authentic leads, and not just for everyone to just go there to get, your badge scanned or something. So it works out in a great way where the conference has gained the respect of not only the region, Pacific Northwest, and not only now the country, but actually we're seeing a lot of international attention coming here. Some of our keynote speakers, Julia Pottinger is from Jamaica. We had Vernon Richards coming from the UK. And so
Leandro from Mexico.
Leandro from Mexico. So now I'm from Barbados, just in case people wonder.
Oh wow!
So we're truly now growing into like a global community, I believe, and it's pretty impressive to be just a part of it. Just contribute.
It is seriously outstanding that it's not like someone is the head or behind the conference. The conference seems to already have become an entity on itself, that you're just passing the torch, and who knows who is going to be driving it next time.
Maybe it could be you. You could be.
When you were telling the story, I was like, I think I know where this is going.
It honestly could be anyone. I didn't think that I would end up getting involved, but once I start to see that, hey, you know what, these are people genuinely that care about the space, it makes you want to get involved and just help out, and it helps you to grow as well yourself personally and professionally, the contacts that you make. There's just so much benefits to kind of participating and volunteering. It's great.
Yeah, if anyone is interested, big invitation. And I can attest, I have been walking around here, meeting people, having the opportunity to meet all sorts of, if you want to say, heroes of mine from when I started testing. I was telling Jason, I was reading books that you wrote, and now I'm here sitting with you. You can too be here sitting with Tariq, learning more about AI. It's a huge, collaborating and coming and learning from all these people. And I would highly recommend it. We're coming back from the pandemic.
Yes.
We are letting that behind, and being in person, being able here to fist bump and be all together, which is awesome. It's incredible, and you shouldn't miss this opportunity. You shouldn't miss the opportunities that Tariq is mentioning. Free learning, everything is out there. The YouTube University web pages. Also, I believe some of the tracks here are for free and for register, right?
Yeah, some of the tracks are for free. So there's all the keynotes are streamed online for free, and hopefully we can continue to do more of that. Obviously, because we are coming out of the pandemic, we're encouraging in person, but we know there's still folks that can't make it, and there's also folks that are international that we recognize that the barriers for you actually got opened up once the pandemic hit, because maybe a lot of the content or maybe travel to the US and getting a visa. So we want to leave some portion of the conference open. And normally one thing that's very unique is even after all this is done and we've had the conference, we generally tend to open up the content for anyone to be able to see. So that, again, doesn't really happen, but we do it every year, and we have a huge library of not only the papers that were written, the presentations that were made, but then also the recordings. So if you think about those three things, that's a lot of value for the community that we're bringing.
It's a total treasure chest that even I wasn't aware that there was so much at PNSQC. I mean, 40 years of knowledge hidden in those web pages. It's outstanding, amazing. So, well, I think, we should start wrapping down. Amigo Tariq, this has been such a pleasure and honor really, in a personal level, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. For you chased me at Star East.
I ran after you. I was like, I had to meet you first of all, and then I was like, oh, I need you to come here. And let me just say, you're welcome, number one, but I think I owe you more thanks than you might owe me. You're being here, just helping to promote the conference, also being a volunteer because you're here just helping us. Yeah, you're very much a volunteer, helping to bring PNSQC to the live online community. I owe you a gratitude for sure.
No,
and,
man, I'm the one
owning.
It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to learn from you, learn about your trajectory and all the teaching and things that you are doing, both in PNSQC and in the AI and teaching world. Yeah. And in that line, for people that want to learn a little bit more, first about PNSQC, where can people go and check about it?
Yeah, sure. PNSQC.org. Again, treasure trove of information. Normally, all of the papers and all of the authors that I've ever presented are there. You can email myself or Phil, Tariq.King or Philip.Liu@pnsqc.org. There's also contact information on the website as well. Follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Those are good media platforms where our marketing chair, Moss, is always sharing a lot about what we're doing. And even once the conference is done, there's still usually free events and webinars that we host. So keep on throughout the year, kind of treat it like a PNSQC festival.
Yeah.
So that's how you kind of reach PNSQC.
It's a non-stop cavalcade of knowledge here. And okay, that's PNSQC. And about you, for people that want to probably have questions on AI and want to reach out to you and get in touch?
Yeah, sure. I always tell people the easiest way to get to me is on LinkedIn or Twitter, sending me a message. Normally, if people have questions or if they even have taken a course or seen an online talk or live talk from me, you just ping me and I'm happy to get in touch with you. Email is king.tariq@gmail.com, so feel free to shoot me an email as well. But I like to keep myself accessible to whoever needs to kind of get started, so I'm happy to do so.
It's awesome. Take a look, Tariq, T-A-R-I-Q.
That's right.
Because you may be like me, typing it wrong. King, that's K-I-N-G, very easily. Reach out for him on LinkedIn and Twitter, easy to find, not much of a problem. And do not let this opportunity pass. This is an awesome man, lots of knowledge, and lots of very, very good work being done around here. Amigo Tariq, it has been an honor. I don't know if it's handshake or fist bump.
Handshake, fist bump, we could do all of the above.
We're all back to normal. I love it. Okay, everyone. Stay tuned. I hope we'll be able to crack one or more 2 interviews. Stay tuned because PNSQC is not done yet. Right. We'll be tomorrow as well doing some workshops. Most probably I won't bring the cameras, but stuff will still happening. Yes. So take care, stay tuned, and Amigo Tariq, thank you very much for everything.
Thank you.
Okay, stopping the stream and keeping talking because this is usually an interesting endeavor.